Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to BCCA's webinar, Getting Started with Transnational Education. My name is Alfredo Moros Campins, and I'm the Director of External Relations at BCCIE. Thank you for joining us for what we hope will be an informative webinar on transnational education. Now, before we get started, it's important that I acknowledge that at BCCIE, we live and work in the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Just a few quick housekeeping notes as well. We're all very familiar with Zoom by now. Please type any questions or comments you might have using the chat box or the Q&A function. If you need technical assistance at any point, please also use the chat and we'll be happy to help you. Now, today's session, Getting Started with Transnational Education, grew out of feedback from our stakeholders who expressed a strong interest in better understanding what transnational education, often referred to as T&E, is, and how institutions can begin exploring the different options and delivery models that fall under this broad umbrella. The goal of this session is to provide practical insights and perspectives drawn from the lived experiences of our speakers, each of whom engages in T&E in different ways and contexts. It's important to note that the government of BC does not currently have a formal policy or framework for T&E. However, institutions are encouraged to engage early and regularly with the Ministry of Post-Secondary Education and Future Skills when considering or developing T&E initiatives. As you'll hear today, there is no single pathway or model for engaging in T&E. Successful approaches require careful consideration of quality assurance, risk management, and alignment with each institution's mandate and strategic priorities. As our speakers share their experiences today, we hope you'll walk away with ideas and insights that can support your institution's T&E effort. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. Baihua Chadwick, VP International for Thompson Rivers University. Elise Pipitone, Senior Consultant for Edified based in Canada, and Jeremy Histon, also Senior Consultant for Edified based in the UK. Over to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alfredo. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Please bear with me while I relaunch a little poll with you. You should be seeing some T&E poll questions which you can answer directly. And if not, you can get the QR code and answer it via your phone. What we're really interested in learning while we set the stage today is around your particular experience with T&E. So we can tailor some of the conversation around that. How ready you think you are for T&E at your institution, because we know that a lot of capacity building projects, a lot of new pieces of your international operations really require all hands on deck approach at your institution, some expertise that may live beyond what you're currently doing. And we'd curious to know what that looks like for you. In the next 5 years, how important will T&E be for your institution or sector? As we know, T&E has been a trending topic in Canada over the last year. And so understanding how that's being reflected at your institution, the conversations you're having around the table around what that looks like for the future of your operation. And if you're having those conversations today and building that into your future planning. Also, what does your institution want to achieve through T&E activities? The big why question, and as Alfredo said, how does this kind of connect to your institutional mandate? And why T&E? Why are you looking towards transnational education? And then what are the top 3 challenges and risks associated with delivering T&E programs abroad in your eyes? What are the things that you see are the challenges to overcome and are the riskiest parts of this business? And we'll definitely be touching on all of these topics throughout our presentation and wanting to hear from you at your institutions. So I'm just seeing.
It looks like we might have a few technical issues. Is it 24 out of 60 people, or am I reading it wrong?
5 questions, 24 out of 60. Maybe we can get a little note in the chat if people are having issues. Oh, it looks like that percentage is growing. But if you are having issues answering the
Yeah.
poll, please let us know.
But looks like we have a good mix in terms of most people are exploring T&E. You're in the right place today. And a few with no experience at all, but mixed in there with some that have mature, long-standing T&E operations as well. So it's good to have some experience in the room as well.
Mm-hmm. Would love to hear from those with long-standing operations on some of your lived experiences and thoughts throughout the session, as well as those who are just getting started and wanting to understand what they're in for when exploring T&E. We're really happy to have Baiwa on our panel as well, who's got a lot of great experience to add to the conversation from a BC perspective. I'm going to maybe give it another minute and close the poll so everyone can see our results here as they come through. I think with some of these short open-ended answers, we'll see. It might take a few minutes to pull through. Okay. Oops. Can everyone see the results available? I think so. So it looks like almost half of us here are at the current planning stages, currently discussing or evaluating T&E opportunities. This is exactly the place for you when trying to weigh options for different models, different partners, and different places to operate, and are all very vastly different, and connecting that to your institutional context. How ready do you think you are for T&E at your institution? Again, early discussions for many of you, but for a good 34% of you, active T&E partnerships, still building capacity and at the operational stage. For many, this takes years and years to get to that point, so congratulations. When it comes to how important T&E will be for your institution or sector, it looks as though there's a bit of a split, a nice to have, but not a priority. One of several strategic priorities for many of you and critical for growth and sustainability. Okay, it looks like not everyone can see the results, so I will read them out. When it comes to, it looks like if you maximize the screen, these will come up as well for you. Kate, I'm not exactly sure how to read the short answer results from the poll questions.
Can you see them on your screen?
I can see the just the questions with 35% answers, but not the actual.
I can share that from the back end. Just 1 second here.
Thank you. Okay, for the technical assistance.
Of course. 1 second. Do you want me to share my screen so we can see them, or how do you want to?
Sure.
You wanna stop sharing? I can share my screen here.
There you go.
Can you see? Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Are we at question number 4?
Yeah, number 4. Okay, so want to achieve mobility, a hub for global citizens for the next decade. Financial sustainability, diversifying pathways, more revenue and revenue generation. So looks like a good mix of academic financial objectives and some long-term thinking around your presence and your footprint. And what are the top 3 challenges and risks associated? Resources, ability, language, many listed here, credential recognition, timeframes, integration, I think policy, global, internal challenges, a lot that I hear from institutions. It's a huge undertaking, TNE, and all of the literal world of considerations to think about, but also the internal course direction and change as well. Global image, some notes about reputation here as well. Thanks, Kate. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Thanks everyone for bearing with me. There's a lot to juggle here. So yeah, as we can see, a lot of questions, a lot of difference in motivation, and a lot of potential challenge on the horizon. So hopefully in today's session, we can answer some of those questions for you, clarify and shine the spotlight on some of those as well. And we've heard from you in your registration and have had some questions from you around, that align with some of the things we're seeing in the poll. And so we've really wanted to create a bespoke session for British Columbia institutions around getting into TNE and some of those questions you have for us. So we're going to talk a little bit today about TNE in context for Canada. Why are we talking about TNE today? We'll talk about some different models. We'll introduce TRU and their case study, their experience with Baiwa here, who will share some lived experience to really highlight some of the theory and practice around TNE operations. We'll talk about success and risk factors. So a lot of those concerns and questions about risk for your institution, and trying to start to understand, is TNE right for your institution, how to do this well. We've also developed a market spotlight for 3 markets that we think are very relevant for BC institutions today, where we'll talk about some of the high-level developments within those markets. We will talk about keeping quality and student experience at the center of TNE, and also touch on some of the common pitfalls and keys to success from many who have come before us and who we've worked with at Edified, or subject matter experts and research that we've pulled together on these topics. And then we'll end with a Q&A where you can ask us questions that you have throughout the session. A little bit about us before we dive into things. We've already dove into things. My name is Elise. I'm the senior consultant for Edified in Canada. I've worked now in higher ed for almost 15 years in institutions in Canada and with institutions throughout Canada. And my focus has really been on student success, retention. I've done some nonprofit work here in Canada as well around supporting international students in country. And it's a big passion of mine. A little bit about Edified, and some of you may have seen our talk through CVIE or have met me or some of our colleagues at conferences abroad. We work with higher ed institutions, peak bodies, government organizations, all within the expertise of higher ed and post-secondary education and international education. We work and have consultants and subject matter experts throughout the globe, Australia, New Zealand, UK, North America, and support institutions in a variety of ways. And I'll introduce my co-speaker, Jeremy, who will talk a little bit about his experience and a bit about how we specialize in TNE. Thanks.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Jeremy. I'm 1/5 of the team at Edified based in the UK. I'm based here in London, so joining you from a very dark evening here in the UK. So thank you for having us today. Pleasure to speak to you, and just really to dive into what we do in terms of TNE. I think the important thing about Edified is that all of our consultants have been in your shoes. So all of our consultants have at least a decade working in international education, From my point of view, a lot of my experience has been within T&E, so setting up and running, operationalizing T&E campuses across Asia, mostly in Singapore, but also in China. And we work closely with our clients, particularly at the early stage, so defining how ready they are, helping them to define what their drivers are and why they're looking to do T&E, and then optimizing their readiness to get going with T&E and helping to work out how to plan it and where to look and what to actually deliver. Thanks, Elise.
So we will be talking today about extending BC's quality, values, and impact through global partnerships in T&E. I'm sure many of you know this and have heard this, that while T&E is a hot topic, it is not a shortcut to growth or a replacement to international recruitment. Instead, it's a long-term relationship-driven strategy that builds on what BC already does well: strong quality assurance through your EQA commitments, a culture of student support and transparency, and a global reputation for credible, ethical education delivery. So T&E is trending. I'm sure many of you have seen headlines, have seen through senior leadership that you must investigate T&E now. You know, conversations now around the shift from the kind of gap that traditional international recruitment has left for institutions across Canada. It's gaining momentum, but for very practical reasons. As you know, policy pressure is reshaping the landscape here. We don't need to talk anymore about PGWP reforms, enrollment caps, or constraints, but this is limiting traditional recruitment-led growth, pushing institutions to diversify and look at different sustainable models. And at the same time, demand is growing in key international markets abroad where youth demographics are growing. There are supportive T&E host country policies and an appetite for international credentials, making in-country delivery more attractive. And globally, competition for internationally mobile students has intensified, all with this technology leap that has made online and hybrid delivery more viable at scale. So this has shifted from more of a niche activity or something that Canadian institutions haven't been very active in to a more strategic consideration. So that brings us to a more local and practical question: where does British Columbia sit within this national and global T&E context? Well, for many of us, it's difficult to really understand the true scope and scale of what Canadian institutions have been doing in T&E. Many have been active for 20 plus years. Many have looked at bricks and mortar operations all the way to hybrid delivery and in between. But since there is not a joined up approach at the moment, and as Alfredo mentioned, that the BC ministry does not have a formalized structure for T&E at the moment, but looks to be interested in and developing something. You may not be an early mover in the T&E space abroad, but the opportunity really is to build from other experiences, networks at home, working in markets now that have more clearly defined guidelines, and adopt some proven models and learn from the mistakes of others as well. So we're happy to bring all of this experience, but also to have TRU here to bring some theory to life from a BC institution perspective. So before we jump into the TRU model, Jeremy's going to walk us through just what is T&E from a 101 perspective. What are some of the models we're talking about today to really frame up our conversation?
Yeah, thanks, Elise. Now, you might think we should have had this up at the top. What is T&E? What are we talking about? It means a lot of things to different people, but simply put, usually as a sort of definition, it's delivery of academic programs by an institution of one country to students located in another. So usually when we're thinking T&E, we're talking about taking your programs from Canada and delivering them in another country. But you can see here on this slide, we've got a range of different types of models. And particularly if you look on the right side, you can see we've plotted them across a sort of risk and reward continuum there. Starting from on the left-hand side, articulation which is really, I guess you can tell it's the lower risk option, potentially the lowest reward as well. But for many institutions, it's a simple way to get started. I say simple. It's a way to get started, an entry point. So that is really recognizing an overseas institution's programs and credit mapping them into your programs so that students can travel across to your home campus with credit to complete your certificate, your degree, whichever program it might be. Across the world, the most popular models of T&E are the franchise and the dual degrees that you see in the middle of that lineup, really. Franchise being where you license your programs to a trusted partner, and we'll come on to the importance of finding the right partner. But they would teach it with your quality oversight and academic oversight to ensure that students are learning your program in their country, but you are very clear that you're in charge of the quality and oversight. Dual and joint degrees are where that partnership goes a step further, and students will end up getting a degree certificate from both institutions. And right up to the top there, on the most risk but potential, the most reward, is a branch campus, which is literally the bricks and mortar operating a full campus under your own brand name in another country. So high risk in terms of a lot of financial investment from the start, but long term, and most T&E is a long term strategy. The rewards can be quite high. But for one of the key points, I guess, of this webinar today is to think about your risk appetite of your institution and think about which model suits your institution the best, particularly at the getting going stage. So yes, I think it's time we introduced our special guest star, Baiwa Chadwick from Thompson Rivers University there in Canada. Baiwa, thank you for joining us. Would you mind just introducing yourself a little bit and talking about why and how Thompson Rivers got involved in T&E, and in particular taking us through this case study you have for China?
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. As introduced, I'm Baiwa Chadwick. I'm the Vice President International at Thompson Rivers University. As many of you might already know, that Thompson Rivers University is located in the interior of British Columbia, in a beautiful city called Kamloops. We are a public, comprehensive, but also we are youth-inspired research institution. And increasingly, we are focusing on the dual sector, which unites academic excellence with vocational education as well. And Thompson Rivers University, we have about 10,000 students on our main campus here in Kamloops. And we have a satellite campus in Williams Lake. And we also have about 14,000 online and print delivery open learning students across the country and across the world, really. So we have been engaged in international education for over 40 years. Now, in the late 80s, because of course today we're talking about T&E engagement. So in the late 80s, our founding director, Charles Mossop, he was a anthropologist, very interested in different cultures and interested in introducing world culture to our students. So he led a number of study tours, culture exploration tours, particularly one was in China. And so that got the campus, our leadership, and the campus interested again in other cultures. For our students, initially, our engagement was really to bring world culture to this campus. As you might know, our university located in the interior of British Columbia. Many of our students actually are first generation students. Many of them have not traveled probably beyond Vancouver or east beyond Calgary. So that was our initial engagement, was introducing world culture to our campus. Through the exploration, and we prepared the campus also to welcome international students. Now, I would say around year 2000, shortly before 2000, we realized, and some of you who were engaged in international education would remember, that's when China had a major push, policy push for internationalization. And China opened its door to international education, which what they engaged in was sending their students to different world universities and also welcoming other universities to China. So that's when we engaged with China on both fronts. We opened our campus door also to the Chinese students. At the same time, we started engaging with this amazing, you see a couple of pictures of one of our main partners in China, which I will be speaking about our experience over 20 years. So in 2002, we engaged with this amazing university in Tianjin, China, called Tianjin University of Technology. So at the very beginning, through discussions with both partners, with our partner, we decided to choose the dual credential, dual degree option, as Jeremy mentioned, in the middle of the risk and award scale. And so we choose a Bachelor of Business and Management, Business and Technology, and a dual degree. The structure for us was, at the time, we call it a 4+0. So students could entirely take our degree credential in China, but they do have the option of coming to Canada, to TRU, anytime after they've completed their first year of study. So qualified students at the end of their study would receive 2 independent credentials: the Bachelor's of Business Administration degree from Thompson Rivers University and the Bachelor's degree from Tianjin University of Technology. I said qualified students, and because these 2 degrees are separate, independently issued to the students, so students must meet both institutions' graduation requirements. So they might be different. For us, students must meet 120 credits in order to meet their bachelor's degrees graduation credential. But for Tianjin University of Technology, for their bachelor's credential, they actually require 200 credits. So the students, in order to receive both credentials, they must meet both requirements. What we have done at the very beginning was to align our curriculum and our courses. We compared their courses with ours to align them. So many of them are basically students will be, so they're aligned with the additional courses requirements they must meet from the Tianjin University of Technology side. So with that going on, the other part of it is, in order to meet with the Chinese Ministry of Education's approval, we must also deliver, when I say we, is TRU, must deliver 30% of the courses. So we do, each year, we have to dispatch our faculty to China to meet that requirements. So over the years, we took our very first intake of students. In fact, the very first intake was quite large. And this is through, again, the government's quota. As you may know that in China, there is a university entrance exam that students must pass and be in order to be admitted by higher ed institutions. So because our program was approved by MOE and we receive intake quota, the first cohort was 160 students. And so we graduated our very first cohort of dual degree students in 2006, I think. Yeah, for 2002 was our first intake. 2006, we graduated our first intake. So through the 23 years of experience, we've gained some positive experiences, learned some lessons as well, and I will be more than happy to share in detail during the Q&A session if you have questions. So I will be happy to share now for today the case study about this particular partnership. And I would say one really important aspect of it is at the very beginning, we need to know what you need to know. We all need to know what we want from this partnership. So for TRU at the time, initially it was about culture awareness and prepare the campus for welcoming international students, and also to elevate our institution's reputation through partnerships and also the profile. At the time, perhaps in China or overseas, people are not really aware of this small university. At the time, we were not even a university. We were a University College of the Caribou, UCC. So we became a full-fledged university actually in 2005. So right before we graduated, the very first intake of dual degree students. So I would say what's really important is your objectives, your institutional mandate, and your objectives, what you want to do. And what we had to do was really to start with the grassroots, engaging our faculty. And in fact, the model was developed with the faculty members. And even the actual partnership agreements, our faculty members were heavily involved in basically describing the resources we have, what we can do, and what we require for quality assurance. So one of the things was really, really tightly engaging our faculty. Now, each year, our faculty members travel to China in order to deliver the 30% of the courses. So it will be 8 courses each year we have to deliver. And these faculty members were also engaged in quality assessment at the earlier years. Now, later on, through a few years later, we realized also with the increased international students coming on campus, we realized that number was actually too large for us to handle. So you think about it, yeah, each intake was 160 students, and it got to quite a large number and for us to deliver. So we adjusted that number to a 90 student intake, which we actually found that meet our resource and also for quality assessment, quality assurance. It worked a lot better for both institutions. So halfway through, we adjusted that. We were able to get the ministry's adjustment to a 90 student intake. So now we have graduated probably over 3,000 students over the year. At one point, it was interesting that we actually were graduating more BBA students in China than in Kamloops on our main campus here. I will stop here. Just that was my introduction to this particular partnerships. We also have other different models and different partnerships, but I will just stop right here and be prepared to answer some of your questions in a little bit.
Thank you, Baiwa. That brings us to our next slide here. Jeremy, I'm not sure if you're back on, but the next slide here is around the non-financial incentives for TNE. So as Baiwa had mentioned, the why and bringing that different culture recognition to your institution, and also some of what you had mentioned around grassroots, that TNE is not always about the financial incentive, but of course is stronger when rooted in things like global access, elevating your brand and your partner's brand and reputation abroad, sharing resources for faculty, capacity building, risk diversification, and engaging home students and faculty. So I'm going to pass this back to Jeremy to talk a little bit about, are you ready to do TNE well? Oh, I think you might be. Oh, there you are. Jeremy, can you hear us?
Well, while we wait,
Hello,
oh,
can you hear
Jeremy's
me?
ready. Okay.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, there's.
Apologies. We're having a massive rainstorm outside and it's knocked out my Wi-Fi, so I'm just pairing to my phone.
Jeremy.
Sorry about that. Best laid plans. Yes, let me talk to you about the how to do the TNE well. So this is how we how a simple way really of looking at how ready your institution might be for getting into TNE. Simply put, we divide it into four: the why, the who, the where, and the how. So if we look at the why first, the most important part, making sure you have strategic alignment internally. As I think has already been mentioned by Baiwa, but it's really important that we make sure that the idea of TNE is aligned with your internal mission and strategic plan, that there's clear senior leadership buy-in, and not just senior leadership, but across schools and across departments as well. And to be aligned on what's driving it. So is it about student experience, building a reputation overseas? Is it a risk mitigation issue? Is it revenue driving, diversification? It might be all of the above, but make sure you know what your drivers are. And then the most important part of the why is to understand your risk appetite. So what level of risk your institution is okay with, and therefore that will drive your preferred entry point. Secondly, we look at the where. So looking at markets where you might deliver your TNE or build your partnerships, you want to think about, is there a real demand in that host market? How do you assess that? Which of your programs are best suited to TNE in that particular market? And what distinct value do you bring to what is often an already competitive landscape in TNE? Thirdly, partnership profile, so the who. When you're looking at a partner, you want to make sure that their values and their reputation are aligned to yours. You need to obviously do your due diligence. Is their quality aligned to your quality? What do you think is a non-negotiable aspect for your institution when looking for a partner? And when you're starting to get narrowed down to the partners, are they prepared to invest through the early challenges? And that's not just investing financially, but the time it takes to build the relationships to get these agreements and partnerships off the ground. And finally, the how is your operational readiness. So do you have the people in place, systems in place, and the governance to be able to deliver the TNE you want to deliver? Are you ready for the regulatory and quality requirements and the environment where you've decided to deliver that? And does your capacity match the risk level of that model? Maybe a question for you, Baiwa. Think about those four areas. What do you think institutions tend to overestimate about TNE when they're starting out, and what do they often underestimate?
Yeah, from our experience, and particularly in the case study, the case of partnership with Tianjin University of Technology. And I think obviously, as you do know that in British Columbia, any international education has to be, any activities in international education, it has to be self-funding. And so throughout our 20 plus years of experience, faculty or leadership, particularly leadership, tend to, the one thing tend to be overestimated is the financial reward. And the one thing that tend to be underestimated through our experience, again, is the actual time and the detailed day-to-day work required. This was especially relevant for us because it was 20 plus years ago. As you can imagine, our faculty and the partner faculty internationalization was still at the cusp of the beginning stage. The faculty members and administrators involved in the partnership from both partners need to gain knowledge in intercultural communication and understanding the partner's culture, as well as higher ed education systems. And how do you align these two? And it requires, boy, constant communication and at times patience. And really time commitment is one thing. And from our experience, I can say that is largely underestimated.
Thanks so much.
Bhaira.
We hear that a lot from almost everyone who's ventured into TNE as well. So it's great to hear that as well. Okay, Jeremy, into market spotlights.
Yes. So we're coming on to the where again. And this is how we tend to work through 4 pillars of deciding on which destination country, which market to look at, starting with political and economic stability. So, is there stable government there? Are there positive trade relations with Canada? What's the population like? Is it a growing young middle class population? And is there a clear lack of supply in terms of quality education opportunities that meet the needs of that young population? Is there a history of political and economic stability and openness to Canada? And what about the ease of doing business? What do we know about the business environment? Simple things like fund transfers out of the country, for example, could be a big problem if that's not possible for a T&E operation. Secondly is market demand. So we assess, is there a demand for Canadian or international education as a whole at tuition fee levels that sustain the operations? What's the alignment with the local labour market? Are there any skills gaps that the local government there really needs to fill, doesn't have the capacity to, and therefore you could tailor your programs, your offering in the T&E area to suit those needs. And then having a look at competitors. So is there a presence of other Canadian institutions or other international institutions already offering T&E? Is it a crowded market? Is it a first mover place? Would you be the first institution going there and weighing up those strengths and weaknesses there? Thirdly is the regulatory and legal environment. So how well recognized and accepted is T&E in that market? So will students that complete those degrees have those degrees recognized going for local jobs, government jobs in that market? Is the regulatory environment one that you can navigate with local assistance probably, but is it workable? And are you able to have an exit strategy? Always important to have an exit strategy in case things don't work out. Is there already a credible quality assurance agency on the ground there locally that you can work with in the early stages to build relations there? And what other considerations are there if you're franchising or looking for accreditation in that local market? And finally, operational challenges. So the fact, is there adequate IT and infrastructure for facilities in that market? Are there qualified local faculty staff that would be qualified to teach your programs? Do you already have an in-country support network? So do you have agents? Do you have in-country staff maybe? Are there trade commissioners on the ground that can help you in the setup and support the growth of the T&E operations? So all of these are areas to think about when you're looking at where you might launch your T&E operations in the first instance. Right. Sorry, market spotlight. So just quickly, and I'm very conscious of the time, we want to give you plenty of time to ask questions. So we've just prepared 3 very brief sort of update slides, I guess. Three big markets for T&E, which you may or may not think about entering, and you may know about some of the big news stories out of these countries. But India is an obvious one. It's forever been the big opportunity in T&E that hasn't quite been realized until recently, when the government started to approve licenses for branch campuses. I mean, for many years, there have been collaborative models working there, franchise partnerships, as we mentioned before. And in fact, those are still the biggest partnerships. With the UK, for example, has over 15,000 students enrolled in T&E programs in India. But and most of those are in the collaborative franchise area. But that's going to change as you see the growth of branch campuses. So in the last couple of years, the University Grants Commission has approved licenses for branch campuses. There's already 3 that have opened and are operational, 2 Australian, Deakin University of Wollongong University, and just recently the University of Southampton from the UK has opened up. And in fact, they've been quite vocal in very open, sharing their experience along that journey to opening and about their model. So you can research that, and we can share some links. I'm sure that you can find out about their experience. But interesting to note, there's already 17, total of 17 foreign universities now approved to have their campus open. Majority of them are the UK again, Lancaster, Surrey, Bristol, Aberdeen, York and Liverpool. And in Australia, we've got 4 more, La Trobe, Western Sydney, Victoria and UWA, and 1 Italian design institute as well. So this is all in the last year or so, the last couple of years, that these universities have sort of raced ahead to take advantage of these policy changes for branch campuses. Elise, should we go on to China just quickly? I'm conscious of time again, so I'm just going to go through these quickly. We could spend days talking about different markets, but just briefly on China, Baiwa already highlighted that I think in China that there've been changes in terms of reform. So initially very open to international education, then they sort of turned off the taps for a while. And then just last year, there was more reforms where they turned the taps back on and announced that they were much more open again to attracting more international higher education partners. They basically have a target. They have 800,000 T&E students at the moment in China. They want to go to 8 million in the next decade. So, big targets, big growth. And to do that, they are, someone can only see the India slide. And we might have to come back to India at the end, sorry, or else we won't get through everything else.
Yeah, this presentation will be shared as well to all the attendees, so you'll have all the time you need to pour over it.
Apologies for having to go a bit quickly, but yeah, so the Chinese are being much more open and transparent again now, and approving different models which might be attractive. And I think the key point on there that's interesting is that they are really open now to attracting international students to China, and for the first time allowing them to study on T&E programs. So China has for a long time grown international student numbers to Chinese universities, but now they are open to international students joining T&E programs. So you might have students from Africa, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, all big markets for China, but now could be studying your Canadian degree in China. So really interesting development there. And just at the end of the year, they announced 122 new partnerships for T&E partnerships. So really ramping back up again in China. And then the next slide is just a similar note on Vietnam, really. Vietnam, a big T&E market, not as big as China, but the UK, for example, and I apologize for all the UK examples, but the UK is very transparent with their T&E numbers, so it's easier to research. But we have, from the UK, we have over 12,500 students in T&E programs in Vietnam, so it's a big market. And again, at the end of last year, the National Assembly approved some changes to their frameworks, which I think the main point of it is in bold there. That's they're welcoming more branch campuses and more transnational education programs. So far, there's only one official branch campus. That's RMIT out of Melbourne, Australia, who have had a branch campus there for 25 years, I believe now, and some 12,000 students on that campus as well. So they are looking to grow that campus and expand it in the coming years. So 3 countries there, 3 big markets to keep an eye on. We look at all markets, but those are the 3 that really sort of stand out at the moment. But we're happy to research others for you if you like. Thanks, Elise.
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to touch briefly on quality as well. With the advent of the BC EQA, there's a big focus on quality and wanting to make sure that T&E is sustainable and it positively impacts partners and students. This was an interesting slide at CBIE recently presented by IDP, which was talking about student sentiment. So around T&E, so understanding that staying in your home country to study with an international credential was a motivation around saving money, but students weren't fully sold on the quality of T&E, which I thought was really important to note that before delivery has even started, looking at due diligence and looking at the right partner to help mitigate some of those risks and quality assurance potential issues down the road is one of the strongest indicators of long-term success that we've seen and from hearing from others. These are just a few of the best practices that I think, as Jeremy had said, we could probably spend a day talking about quality assurance and all its different facets, but validating the partner, for example, their financial viability, their reputation, their track record, and generally, do you like the people? These are people you will be working with in a culture at an institution that you will be working with for a long time to come, hopefully, and that they should also be asking those same questions about you. Really, it's about helping to elevate the reputation of both institutions for quality. So this list is a bit of a temperature test to ensure that you align with your partner, first of all, around regulatory and accreditation alignment. Baiwa, you mentioned this from the very beginning, before agreements are even signed, ensuring that there is compliance and across both institutions. For example, this could look like mapping accreditation requirements early and confirming those alignments. Academic quality, maintaining your home campus standards for curriculum assessments and faculty oversight. That could be it could look like being a part of interviewing and approving faculty that would be teaching your curriculum, having mapped quality assurance processes between institutions, shared responsibility and partnership. So, for example, establishing joint operation boards with clear accountability, embedding really clear roles and responsibilities as well as KPIs. So how are you going to be measuring what success looks like and embedding that into the contract? This prevents ambiguity later, especially when staff turns over, which happens quite a bit in these operations. And then ensuring that things like student services and budgeting and staffing is not an afterthought. So delivering that equivalent experience that could look like defined minimum service standards for advising, well-being, complaints handling, even interviewing students throughout for their feedback, really as a lead indicator of quality for the partnership overall. Risk management and sustainability, so actively managing academic, regulatory, financial, and reputational risk, realistic ramp-up timelines, clear exit clauses, and ongoing monitoring is sometimes I think people fall into the trap of we've had a long-term successful partnership, and so some of these meetings and regular touch points are going to fall away, but it's really important to set up those warning signals, making sure that these things are visible to senior leadership, that there are clear communication channels and regular review cycles. So I think, given the fact that we only have a few more minutes left, I'm going to just slide past a couple of these slides and get into some questions. But before we get into the Q&A, we also had a pre-question around resources. There's some great resources here from the British Council. There's an incredible toolkit through TEXA out of Australia, which I would highly recommend. It's very comprehensive. And alongside these bits of research, talking to your agent networks, talking to folks on the ground and people with lived experience. Really, it's an art and a science and really requires both perspectives. So as I said, we'll be sharing these slides for you to dig into your own research, but we want to get to the Q&A. So thanks for allowing me to go through that at lightning speed. I wanted to open up the chat to anyone who's been attending to ask any of us questions you have or may have about T&E.